Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kenny Lamons here with Medicare Millennials, and today we have a special interview, a special show. As you guys know, it's right in the middle in between Medicare Advantage OEP from January to March and Medicare Advantage AEP. So for a lot of you agents out there that already sell Medicare or you want to get into selling Medicare, you're asking myself, how am I going to feed my family until AEP, till I get my commissions all the way in January? And that is why it is so critical and important that unless you got a ton of money stuck away in the bank, that you're making the very most out of everybody you see, that you turn every lead not into a customer, but a client by cross-selling products to them. And there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, but at the end of the day, if you want to be successful, especially early on in this business, we've got to learn how to do that. So now I've got a great friend in the business. If you guys haven't seen his channel, he's a lot of fun. He puts out information about Medicare, but also just about sales in general, about life in general, about his faith. And so it's a really fun channel. So who am I talking to? Who's the surprise man?
Yeah, this is Rob Sevilla, man, all the way from Tupelo, Mississippi. Kenny, thank you so much for having me on. Some people know me as the Medicare minister. And like you said, I have a channel where I just love life, man. You know, Medicare is fun to me. I love making an impact in people's lives. I love motivating and empowering people. And today, I'm really excited about just sharing 5 strategies that I use to bundle. Right, I call it bundling on purpose, and so we're going to talk about that today. So once again, I'm honored to be on the podcast here or the channel.
Man, I'm so excited to have you. Remind everybody out there what your channel is called so they can easily find it. Of course, I'll have it in the description, but
sure. Real simple, Medicare Minister / my name, Rob Sevilla, which should show up here on the screen. Mm-hmm. You can just Google it. And like I said, we put a lot of motivational, inspirational, faith-based content. Minister, because I've been in the ministry for over 20 years. Recently, lead pastor, church planner, and of course, Medicare, because we love Medicare, and that's what we lead from here. My wife and I are independent agents here in North Mississippi, and so we consider Medicare to be not only a mission, but also a ministry.
Man, that's awesome. So glad to have you on here. I know we'll have more discussion in between the content, but I always like my videos never to be too long, and I know you have so much to say. And it's going to be really helpful today. So I'll let you jump into your first point here.
Absolutely. So I'm going to give you 5 tips, 5 strategies that I've used to help me sell over 1,300 applications in 1 year, right? If I was to kind of add it up over the past few years, it's multiple thousands of applications. And so, Kenny, I want to share with your audience some of these things that have helped me. Okay. So number 1 is this. And I believe this is often overlooked, Kenny, and that is there's a lot of agents out there that don't really know who they are. Some people would say identity, right? And some people would go, well, how does that play a part into me selling a lot of applications? Because I truly believe this, and I'll stop after I ask this, Kenny, but I'd love your feedback, is you can't transfer to people what you don't possess. And if you don't know who you are and confident in who you are, whether you're on the phone, on a Zoom presentation like we're doing now, or in person, which is my personal favorite, you know this as a seasoned agent, those people will smell it right away. And I have found that if I know who I am and I'm confident in that, then it's helped me sell more apps because people go, man, this guy really knows his stuff. He really knows who he is. And that confidence just transfer over during the presentation. Have you sensed that or seen that in your own Medicare journey?
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. And I mean, I'll tell you what that reminds me of is just establishing credibility, right? I think those two things have got to be similar if I'm kind of following along with what you're saying, but it's impossible to establish credibility on a one-to-one sales presentation unless that credibility comes through your identity, right? Who you are and who they think you are when you come in there.
Yeah, and that's great for me. And there again, I understand everybody may not be faith-based that watch this, but for me, I know who I am, but more importantly, I know whose I am. Right. So for me, real quickly, I wake up every day going, man, I got this divine creator cheering me on. Right. All of heaven's cheering me on. And I'm excited when I get up, and I have a mantra that says I live on purpose because I know I was created on purpose. But here's the deal. Don't tune us out and don't discount this, because we live in an industry that highlights doing, right? But we sacrifice the being part. But if you learn who you are, then you'll be surprised. The byproduct of doing on the other end is so powerful. And if you don't know this, sales is nothing more than influencing people. But how can you influence people if you don't know who you are, love who you are, and then love the people that you're serving?
I love that. What would be like a practical example for a new agent to begin to step into the identity they're trying to build in their career?
Absolutely. And you have channels. Let me answer it this way. You have channels like Kenny's and others that are telling you 3 ways to do this, 5, and you need that. But for me, I find content for me that's faith-based, positive, uplifting. One of my favorite channels is by a guy by the name of Ed Milet, because he not only gives sales performance stuff and motivational stuff, but it's also about identity and purpose. And here's the deal. I'm a big guy that's purpose over performance, assignment over activity, mission over money. And it's not because of the fact that I don't believe in performance. I'm a high D personality, so performance is my middle name. But it's what I have found is that when I'm confident in who I am and own this identity, and I love myself, Kenny, I have found that the production for me has been at a way higher level than if I'm just doing, but never learning how to become something.
I love it. I love that that's the first tip, because it's at the core of everything that these agents are doing, especially when you're new and trying to learn. You can get so caught up in activity and in doing and trying to follow steps A to Z that there's not, you lose the you, which is the key ingredient in your success in sales. So love it.
Yeah. And let me say this one last thing real quickly. It's this, the being part is this. As a sales rep, do you communicate? Do you transfer that you're essential? Right? I believe I'm essential. I believe this world is a better place because God has put me in it, and he's given me a gift and skill set to help make an impact in the lives of the people that I serve, mainly those that I'm impacting through Medicare. So I want to encourage you, do you see yourself as essential? Because if you don't, then all you agents watching out there, you're going to transfer that through your sales presentation.
Yep. And another quick thing on that for all of you new agents, everybody goes about this a little bit different way. Some of us focus on different niches, different products, and we have a different self-identity. So obviously Rob is very strong in his faith. Some of you may or may not be that. You may or may not be a high energy personality. Like I know a lot of successful agents that definitely go like a little bit more dry route, but they're very effective communicators. The point that I'm making here is, if I could sum this up for you, from my perspective, it's really being confident in who you are so that you can transfer confidence to the person that you're trying to help.
Yeah, so. And that's a great point. I totally agree. You can't be me. I can't be you. It's just owning who God created you to be, or who you are, right? For me, I'm going to be high energy, because I've heard it said this way: you can lie with your words, but you can't lie with your energy. So whatever personality type you're in, be all in with that. You're not going to be everyone's flavor, and that is okay. Just be you.
Awesome. What we got next?
Number 2 is ask the right questions. This is sales 101, right? When I'm doing Medicare, I ask people 2 questions when I start my presentation, and it allows me to craft the length of my presentation. Number 1 is, how much do you know about Medicare? Kenny, you know this. What do 95% of the people say? Well, that's why I'm here. It's like speaking Spanish. It's overwhelming to me. We've heard all the sayings. And the second question I ask it this way: are you the kind of person that wants to know everything about Medicare? Or are you the kind of person that just wants the nuts and bolts, or the 30,000 foot view? What do 95% of the people say? They choose the second option. So why is that important? It's not that I don't want to be compliant. It's that too many reps don't ask the right questions on the front end. And then 2 hours later, they're still in a presentation that they could have done in about 45 minutes.
So first of all, I keep looking down, but I'm taking notes here. So this is the first time I've actually heard this specific presentation. So I'm trying to take away from that. I think, first of all, that is just so crucial, asking the right questions, because, for us, we have a script called the bridge. Okay.
Yep.
And what that bridge does is, as you've went in relationally and started to build some rapport with somebody, and just kind of try to get to know them for a few minutes before you jump into business, how do you make the transition from that into, okay, now we're here to talk about something serious. It's business related. Let's jump. How do we get to that, right? The actual needs assessment. And so what we kind of were trained this at a captive agency, and it's evolved over time, but nonetheless, the spirit of it is the same. It's asking the right questions in that bridge to reestablish your credibility, but B, ask rhetorical questions that are going to help simplify, bring down walls, and make your whole sales process easier. But what I love about what you said is how simple yours are. Like, how much do you know about Medicare? How deep, what kind of person are you? You want the nitty gritty details way out in the weeds, or do you want what's important? Like, that is so simple. And especially for a new agent, there's beauty in simplicity.
Yeah, and that's just me. I mean, I'll be honest with you. This is honest confession. I was a slow learner when it came to Medicare. You know, when I started in the industry, I had to humble myself and go learn at the feet of another agent because there was so many moving parts. And Kenny, my personality is I'm going to find the shortest distance from point A to point B. That's just my personality. Once again, I'm owning who I am. And I had to find a system that worked for me. If Kenny's and Ethan's system works better for you, use that system. If this system works good, then make it your own. We're just giving you suggestions and ideas. And Kenny, let me say this. The reason I'm asking these questions and keeping it simple is I'm not trying to convince anybody to buy anything. What I'm doing is trying to uncover what their pain points are and simply bundle with a purpose. What does that mean? The purpose is to make an impact in such a way that addresses all of their pain points, right? So they're winning, but at the same time, maximizing my ROI, which is very important, right? As a new agent, a new agency. So it's a win-win. They're getting max impact, best coverage, if you will. At the same time, the independent agent in the agency is winning. So I'm just addressing what's valuable to them.
From a practical perspective, if a new agent was out there, I don't care if they're selling life insurance, Medicare, whatever, if they just started out every appointment, of course, after introduction of yourself and everything, with those two questions, it would probably it would put them on the right trajectory going forward. So it's just such actionable, practical, asking the right questions to open the right doors, like you said, and bring down walls. So I love that.
Yep. So number 3 is speak their language. You know this, Kenny. It's easy for us to speak a lot of Medicare needs, right? And as a former pastor, a teaching pastor, and someone who's been communicating on different stages from the pulpit to, events, I learned a long time ago that you want to speak the people that you're speaking to's language. And so a lot of times we want to learn so much Medicare needs and just kind of vomit all over them, if you will, that we overwhelm the client and they're sitting back going, man, I don't even understand what this guy's talking about. So I'm a firm believer in speaking their language. Listen, as much as you study the material, you need to study your audience as well. So whether I'm sitting down with LIS, low income subsidy, or whether I'm sitting down with a middle class or upper middle class, or if I'm doing a Medicare seminar, I know my audience because I've studied them. So I know the material, right? That competence there breeds confidence, but also I know my audience. So I'm not going to communicate with an LIS the way that I may communicate individual with someone who may be a little bit higher in the socioeconomic demographic. And that's not a thing to say they're not as important or whatever. I just need to know who my audience is. So that way I speak their lingo.
Man, that's so big for several reasons on so many levels. Like that alone could be a whole video. It really could.
Sure.
Because it's not even necessarily age, demographic, and setting.
Yeah.
It can also be geographic. So
that's right.
If you work, for example, on the other side of Dallas is what we call East Texas.
Sure.
It's very cliquey, old school, rural. Like think of it like I don't know. They're like, they're separatist almost, okay, in a way.
Right.
And so when I used to work out that way and help people out there, I learned real quick that I had to understand a whole different way of talking and communicating, or I was rejected. And it was a hard lesson to learn, but I think it's exactly what an example of what you're talking about. Whereas you go to a rural West Texas and people are just come on in. It's just, and it's knowing your audience. It's exactly what you're saying, like speaking their language. And some of that you're only going to learn by trial and error, right? Like, what are some good ways to begin to be a student of the people you serve? Like, what are some practical ways to learn to speak the languages of the people you're going to be serving? Because if you're new to this, you're like, I don't know, last senior I talked to was my grandparents. That's about it. You know, maybe that's you. So how do you do this?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the rapport building, right? Like for instance, I do seminars, we do food pantries, we do grassroots. So wherever I'm at, I'm always interacting with the people and letting them talk more than me talk. Right before a seminar, I'm working the room, if you will, and I'm trying to get to know everybody. I'm trying to find out what people like, and you'll be surprised that if you just ask a couple of questions and just bring some energy, people will begin to open up with you. Right. So that's one. Also, if I'm doing mailings, I'm getting with my mailer to find out kind of what the demo is there as well. And you know this, no matter where you live in the country, there are similarities in certain demographics. So where I live, it's a pretty small area. And so I pretty much know the area because I've lived here for 20 plus years, right? Just like you just said with Dallas. So practically, I'm just wherever I'm at, I'm always talking with the people. I'm not hiding behind the table. I'm not, some secret place until the meeting starts. I'm in the audience, learning the temperature of the room. So, or taking the temperature of the room and learning them, finding out what's important to them. That's that asking the questions deal again. Real quickly, I'll share with you this story. So we did a seminar not too long ago out of our area, and somebody had done another seminar there. And this is not a knock on them, but when we were done, my slides were not as fancy as theirs. Even my seminar slides are real simple. I keep everything simple. But the lady who had been a teacher for years came up to my wife and said, I went to another presentation that had way fancier slides than you, but I learned so much from this presentation, and you guys were so personable and relatable. Why? Because we talked to everybody in the room. We went around asking them questions, and I spoke their language. I kept it so simple that those people are going to wind up signing up with us, not because we're better, but because we spoke their language and we made it simple for them to understand.
Man, that's awesome. It just kind of makes me think how often a salesperson in general, but especially someone that gets into Medicare or insurance in general, just imagines, man, if I just have the product knowledge and if I just know about Medicare, and don't get me wrong, you need that. That's great. That, guys, that's not what makes the sale. You can't have a 100% cookie cutter method in this business. Speaking their language and being personable with other people is ultimately why people want to do business with you. And not only that, but why they want to continue to do business with you. It was never, so man, that's great stuff right there. That's really good.
Yep. Number 4 goes along with number 3, and that is don't TMI. We've all been around those people that have TMI, even in your personal circle, right? And how many people know we don't like being around people that TMI? It's awkward, it's weird, right? If I could just be a little comical for a minute. But here's what I found, Kenny, is that complexity is the enemy of both execution and clarity. Let me say that again. Complexity is the enemy both of execution and clarity. It's the enemy of execution because as a new agent, when you're trying to dump all this or fill your mind with all this Medicare needs and you're just trying to impress people with all your knowledge, it hurts your overall execution, right? Because you're trying to retain all this knowledge and you lose that flow. It's better to be simple and have that flow and that momentum in your presentation, whatever words you want to use, than it is just trying to be blah, 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 Medicare needs, right? But it also hurts your overall closing and your bundling, Kenny, because when you TMI, they're confused, they're overwhelmed, and they don't even know if they want to buy one or get one thing from you, let alone 3 to 4 things, right? And when we look back on it, by using just these 3 or 4 here, we were averaging about 4 policies about 70 to 75% of the time. Okay, why? Because we knew who we were, right? We asked the right questions, we spoke their language, and this is a big one. TMI. So let me give one more tip. Quit selling past the close. Many new agents do this. I even know seasoned agents that do this, but many new agents just keep talking and sell past the close. And I promise you, if you ask the right questions, as Kenny and I talked about in the beginning, they will tell you almost everything you need to know, right? And don't sell past the close. And great presentations, bottom line, just don't happen by accident.
So was the don't sell past the close tip 5 or an extension of tip 4?
No, that's an extension of tip 4. Don't TMI. I'm just saying a lot of times when they TMI, they keep talking and talking and talking and talking. Don't sell past the close, right? That is part of learning your presentation. That's part of asking the right questions.
Oh my goodness, that's so good. I think that this is an awesome introduction to the correct mindset and process. I think for a lot of new agents, this is going to take some walking through and then reflecting back on and going, I remember when they said don't TMI or don't talk past the close. Because I think what happens for a lot of new agents right along the TMI line is they actually confuse themselves. You know what I mean? Like that you talk so much and you go so deep into multiple potential products for a customer that you ultimately, then you try to bring it all back together. And like you said, the execution just goes south really quick.
Right.
Then you may learn that lesson the hard way, but you can still talk where you're not confusing yourself. You got that down. Okay. But you're still confusing the customer and you're overcomplicating it to the customer. And there's almost like this sweet point that you've got to learn. And I think the real practical takeaway here is how can you, in the most simple terms, still with all compliance, covering the things that you have to, how can you most simply present the information to your client, for everyone's sake?
Yeah, and I love the way John Maxwell puts it, and then I'll go with tip 5 here and then see what some final thoughts you may have. John Maxwell, who I consider the OG, said, great communicators leave their audiences with great clarity. Friends, you're a salesperson, but you're also a communicator. Learn how to communicate simply and with tons of clarity, and I promise you, your sales will go up, your bundling will go up, and we can do a video more in depth down the road, but this is just 30,000 foot view. And so tip 5 is, for me, some people disagree with this, I use a visual aid. So I developed a sheet that allows me to stay on track, stay on point, and I'll put it in a former pastor's and speaker's perspective, because that's kind of what I see everything through the lens. There's nothing worse than going listening to a preacher or just a speaker in general who chases tons of rabbits. Right? Can I get a hallelujah on that? Right? There's nothing worse than someone chasing rabbits, and a presentation that could have been done in 30 minutes is like an hour and a half later. It's the same thing. Maybe if you're brand new, use a visual aid. I still use it. I know my presentation back and forwards, but I use a visual aid to help me present better, close better, and get more apps per per sit down. So that's just for me. It allows me not to chase a lot of rabbits. It allows me to stay on point.
So somebody told me years ago when I first started learning this business that the baby boomer demographic, regardless of the advance in technology, are still a pen and paper people. And in fact, when I first got into this business, a little over half of the applications that we did were still on pen and paper. Not that it wasn't changing rapidly. There were electronic apps. I'm not that old, but it was it's advanced a lot. But at the end of the day, there's still pen and paper people. So I want to give 2 quick examples of the visual aids that might be practical for a new agent. So when I first started, the bombshell of a deal was if you could get a Plan F that was real expensive, which is a Medicare supplement, and go to a Plan G and combo that with life insurance, right? That was like, and then eventually we learned there's other products, but that was the original at the agency I was at, is like, if you're out selling combo sales, you're not hurting, you're doing okay, right? Sure. And one of the best ways I learned to do that was with a T-chart. It was the simplest T-chart on a pen and on a yellow legal pad. And it was on one side, it was like, you've got a plan F for $320 a month. And on the other side, it was like, you've got a plan G, which covers everything you need except that annual deductible and life insurance to protect your family. And I just real simply visually put it out for $1 more than what you were paying for that plan F. And you show them that and you just go,
Sure.
Which one makes more sense to you? And it was like, that always closed the deal if I was doing everything else right, and
Sure.
yeah, also, yeah. So that's just a real practical example, I think. And as you niche down on certain products, you can even, like you said, you created kind of something you can just print out every time, right? Because you were going through the same process with the same clientele, so you could duplicate that. It didn't even have to be custom like I was doing, right?
Yeah, and then that's what I did. I came from the final expense background, and we had a little flip chart back in the day that you went through, but it kept you on point. It kept you on track. It kept you from TMIing too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I developed something, whether I sit down with a Medicare supplement, whether I sit down with an MAPD, or I also do ACA. So whether I sit down with whatever individuals, that visual aid is pre-printed and I don't deviate from the script. It's not robotic. I know it backwards and forwards, but it allows them to have something visual, right? Where most of us learn visually, but it also keeps me on point, right? And I want them to have a great experience with me. So I do whatever is necessary to make sure that experience is coated, if you will, or saturated with a lot of excellence.
You know what, Rob, my favorite thing about watching your channel, talking with you personally, is that you never settle for those simple, like quick fix tips. You always want to know the why behind something, how to improve a process, the spirit of a sales process, and the essence of what someone's trying to do. And so I think you probably helped enlighten and bring to life a lot of the things that new agents are hearing. But the way you just broke down those 5 tips, it was such a big reminder for me of why, because I've been doing it long enough that I kind of was like, well, I do that, but I didn't even remember. I used to work so hard to learn that skill, and you know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of takeaways here for especially new agents. But
yeah, well, absolutely. I've said this multiple times in different interviews and different platforms. Even though I've been preaching for a long time, my wife can testify to this. I was still practicing my sermons on Saturday nights before the Sunday. Why? Because I didn't want to settle, Kenny. I wanted to be the best, right? And what's the old Allen Iverson? Practice, practice, right? Practice, practice, practice. Don't take the skill set for granted, right? You have a chance to make an impact in people's lives every day, and you want to bring that excellence and be the best that you can be.
I love it. So how would you like to wrap up, Rob? I know you always do a really cool thing at the end of all your videos. So let me just give you a chance, knowing that my audience is mostly geared towards Medicare and some final expense. Would there just be one simple nugget that you would leave them with based on your experience and your outlook on this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say this: don't sacrifice being on the altar of doing. If there's one tip that I would take and put arrows to, fingers, whatever, any kind of emojis there to highlight it, would be to work on your identity, work on why you're doing this. Why are you in this industry, or why are you doing whatever you're doing? Because I promise you, you may not believe it, but take my word from it as someone who's been in sales for over 20 years, people are not as dumb as you think they are. Right? And when you walk into that presentation, whether it's a seminar, whether it's individually, whether it's Zoom, phone call, you want to be able to transfer that to them, that they go, hey, there's something about this guy. And this is not braggadocious, Kenny, when I say this, but I can't tell you how many people have sat down with us and they go, gosh, man, you just seem like you're really passionate about what you do. It seems like you really want to help us. Why? Because I have been that person that has sacrificed the being on the altar of doing, and then someone helped me flip that. And when I learned how to perpetually become something every day, Kenny, the doing was a byproduct of that. And now I'm doing at a really high level. So I would just say, focus on becoming a perpetual becomer. Learn what it means to live on purpose every day. And I promise you, you'll see your sales skyrocket.
I love it. Thanks so much, Rob. Always great to talk to you. And
absolutely.
I will let you get back to work because you look like you got a lot of energy, so you still might not be done for the day, huh?
Yeah, man. Well, thank you for having me on. It's an honor. And if I can do anything for anybody, just please reach out to me.
All right, man. Thank you.